Over the following week, Dr. Zekathera completely restructured her research approach. Instead of looking for human weaknesses and limitations, she began investigating the species' capacity for exceeding normal biological parameters. What she discovered challenged everything the galactic community thought they knew about this relatively new spacefaring species. She interviewed Sergeant Maria Gonzalez, a combat veteran who had served in 3 different war zones across human space. Maria was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, with short black hair and calm brown eyes. By Zekthara's original measurements, she should have been one of the weakest humans on the station. "Tell me about your military service," Zekthara requested, her recording equipment capturing every word. Maria settled back in her chair and spoke in a matter-of-fact tone. "During the rebellion on New Texas, my unit was ambushed in the mountains. I carried my wounded squad leader 12 miles through enemy territory to reach our evacuation point. He weighed 200 pounds. I weighed 120. By normal physics, I shouldn't have been able to carry him 1 mile, let alone 12. Zekthara made notes on her electronic pad. "How was this possible? What enabled you to exceed your physical capabilities?" "He was dying," Maria said simply. "My friend was bleeding out and would die if I didn't get him to medical treatment, so I carried him. Humans don't calculate whether something is possible when lives are at stake. We just do what needs to be done." The alien scientist conducted similar interviews with other crew members. Engineer Carl Johnson told her about human colonies that had survived equipment failures in deep space, keeping their life support systems running through improvisation and determination when all technical manuals said it was impossible. Dr. Peter Hayes described medical cases where human patients had recovered from injuries that should have been fatal, their bodies somehow healing damage that would kill most other species. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez shared stories from her combat experience that seemed to violate the laws of physics. Humans fighting for days without sleep when stimulants ran out. Soldiers continuing to function with injuries that would incapacitate other species. Entire units refusing to surrender even when surrounded and outnumbered by overwhelming enemy forces. "We have a saying," Amy told Zekathera during one of their sessions. "Humans are too stupid to know when they're beaten. Other species calculate odds and surrender when defeat becomes inevitable. Humans keep fighting until they win or die trying." Captain Jake Morrison provided historical context that helped Zekthara understand the broader pattern. He showed her records of human exploration, how their species had colonized worlds that other galactic civilizations considered uninhabitable. Planets with toxic atmospheres, extreme temperatures, dangerous wildlife, and hostile environments that should have killed any colonists within days. "We terraform planets by living on them," Jake explained. "Other species engineer perfect conditions before settlement. Humans move to deadly worlds and adapt until we make them livable through sheer stubborn persistence." The captain showed her data about human exploration missions that had succeeded despite equipment failures, navigation errors, and natural disasters that would have doomed any other species. "We don't have the best technology or the strongest bodies, Doctor, but we have something that seems to be unique in the galaxy. We refuse to accept that anything is impossible." Dr. Zekthara began to understand that Ryan Brooks's impossible feat with the tank was not an anomaly, but a perfect example of how humans operated. When faced with extinction, they transcended their normal limitations and accomplished things that violated other species' understanding of biology and physics. She requested access to human historical databases and spent days studying their development as a species. What she found there shocked her even more than the tank incident. Humans had survived multiple near-extinction events on their homeworld, Ice ages that should have killed them instead taught them to adapt and innovate. Plagues that decimated their population were overcome through medical advances and social cooperation. Natural disasters that destroyed their civilizations became opportunities to rebuild stronger and better. "Your species has been extinct several times," she told Jake during one of their conversations. "According to galactic biological models, humans should have died out completely at least 5 different times in your evolutionary history." Jake smiled. "But we didn't die out, Doctor. We survived by becoming something more than what we were before. Every crisis made us stronger and more adaptable." Commander Thex remained on the station for several extra days, fascinated by what he was learning about human capabilities. The Rigelian warrior conducted training sessions with human soldiers, testing their responses to various combat scenarios. What he discovered impressed and concerned him in equal measure. "Your warriors fight differently from any species I have encountered," he told Frank Collins after observing a training exercise. "Most beings fight to achieve victory through superior force or tactics. Humans fight as if they expect to die, but refuse to be defeated. It makes you unpredictable and extremely dangerous." Frank nodded with understanding. "We don't fight to win, Commander. We fight to protect what matters to us. There's a difference in motivation that changes everything about how we approach conflict." Dr. Quintal from the Academic Council was compiling a complete revision of galactic biological classifications. The discovery that humans could exceed their baseline capabilities through psychological triggers had implications for understanding intelligence and evolution throughout the galaxy. "Most species develop within safe parameters," he explained to Zekthara. "They evolve stable characteristics and maintain them across generations. Humans appear to have evolved instability as a survival trait. They change themselves when circumstances demand it." Private Ryan Brooks returned to duty after 3 days of medical observation. His hand had healed completely, showing no permanent damage from punching through tank armor. Dr. Lisa Carter was amazed by his recovery rate, which exceeded normal human healing by a significant margin. "How do you feel about what happened?" Zekthara asked Ryan during a final interview. The young soldier shrugged. "I did what I had to do, Doctor. That tank was going to kill me, so I stopped it. I don't really understand the science behind it, but I'm glad I could protect everyone on the station." His casual attitude toward accomplishing the impossible was perhaps the most revealing thing about human psychology that Zekthara had encountered. Ryan genuinely did not see his feat as extraordinary. To him, it was simply what humans did when faced with no alternatives. As her research period came to an end, Dr. Zekthara began writing her final report. The document that was supposed to prove human inferiority had become something entirely different. She wrote about a species that had evolved to transcend limitations, to achieve the impossible when survival was at stake, to refuse defeat even, when facing overwhelming odds. Her conclusions were disturbing to the established galactic order. If humans could exceed their apparent limitations when threatened, if they possessed hidden capabilities that activated under stress, if they truly did not know when to surrender, then every assumption about their role in galactic civilization needed to be reconsidered. Captain Jake Morrison visited her quarters on the final evening before her departure. "Doctor, I hope your research has been enlightening. I know it didn't turn out the way you expected." Zekthara looked up from her writing with eyes that had seen too much. "Captain Morrison, when I arrived here, I believed humans were weak packs, animals who had stumbled into space through luck. I plan to document your limitations and recommend that other species treat you as harmless primitives." She gestured toward her research notes. Now I understand that humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy precisely because you appear harmless. You hide capabilities that emerge only when you face extinction. You fight battles that cannot be won and somehow win them anyway. You survive situations that should kill you and become stronger in the process. Jake sat down across from her. What will you tell the Galactic Council? The truth, Zekthera replied. That underestimating humanity is the most dangerous mistake any species can make. That your people do not know the meaning of the word impossible. That anyone who considers making humans their enemies should reconsider very carefully. She paused in her writing and looked directly at the human captain. Captain, I came here to study a weak species. Instead, I discovered something that terrifies me. Humans are not the strongest or fastest or smartest species in the galaxy, but you are the only species that becomes more dangerous when you are cornered, more capable when you face extinction, more determined when victory seems impossible. The next morning, Dr. Zekthara departed Kepler-7 with her research complete. Her final report would become one of the most important documents in galactic history, the first accurate assessment of human capabilities and the warning that no species should ignore. As her transport ship pulled away from the station, she looked back through the viewport at the humans going about their daily activities. They appeared exactly as harmless and primitive as when she had first. The observation deck remained silent for almost 5 full minutes after Ryan Brooks had punched through the tank's armor. Dr. Zekthera stood frozen at her recording station, staring at the data streaming across her screens. Her instruments were showing readings that made no sense according to everything she knew about human biology and physics. Commander Thex was the first to speak, his deep voice carrying a note of respect that had not been there before. In 40 years of military service, I have never seen anything like that. My own warriors, enhanced with cybernetic implants and trained from childhood, could not achieve such a feat. Dr. Quintal adjusted his recording equipment with trembling appendages. The elderly scholar had studied dozens of species across the galaxy, documenting their capabilities and limitations for the academic council. Nothing in his vast experience had prepared him for what he had just witnessed. The force measurements are impossible, he whispered to himself. The human's fist generated impact energy equivalent to a military-grade explosive device. His bone structure should have been completely destroyed. Captain Veltar from the Centauri Trade Federation leaned forward to get a better view of the disabled tank. His people were merchants and traders, always calculating the value and threat level of different species they encountered. Humans had been classified as low-threat customers, suitable for simple trade agreements but not military partnerships. That assessment would need immediate revision. Engineer Moxdan from the Builders Guild was examining the hole in the tank's armor through his optical enhancement devices. His species built the strongest structures in the galaxy, using advanced materials and engineering techniques developed over thousands of years. The idea that organic tissue could penetrate military-grade armor violated every principle of materials. Science he understood. Down in the cargo bay, Dr. Lisa Carter continued her examination of Ryan's hand while Frank Collins secured the area. Tony Martinez was working on the tank systems, trying to understand what had caused the malfunction and documenting the damage for his report. "This is remarkable," Lisa said as she wrapped Ryan's knuckles with medical tape. "You have some bruising and minor cuts, but no broken bones, no torn ligaments, no serious tissue damage. By all medical knowledge, your hand should be completely destroyed." Ryan flexed his fingers, testing the movement. There was pain, but it was manageable, like he had punched a heavy training bag too hard rather than penetrating steel armor. I feel okay, Doc. Sore, but okay. Captain Jake Morrison arrived in the cargo bay with Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez close behind him. Jake had been monitoring the situation from the bridge and could hardly believe the reports he was receiving. Amy looked at the hole in the tank's armor with professional interest, unsurprised by what humans could accomplish when pushed to their limits. "Brooks, I need you to tell me exactly what happened," Jake said. "From your perspective, what did you experience when you hit the tank?" Ryan thought carefully before answering. "Sir, when I realized the tank had gone live and was about to fire, something just clicked. I wasn't thinking about armor or physics or anything like that. I just knew I had to stop it, and my body did what it needed to do." Amy nodded with understanding. "It's called hysterical strength, Captain. Humans can access physical capabilities beyond normal limits when facing life-threatening situations. Emergency adrenaline response combined with complete commitment to survival." Frank looked up from his security report. "I've seen humans do incredible things in combat, sir, but nothing quite like this. Brooks didn't just exceed normal human limits. He did something that should be physically impossible." Meanwhile, on the observation deck, Dr. Zekthera was having a complete breakdown of her scientific worldview. She had spent years researching human limitations, documenting their weaknesses, preparing a definitive study that would prove their inferiority to other galactic species. Every piece of data she had collected suggested that humans were among the weakest intelligent beings in the galaxy. "This cannot be correct," she muttered, checking her instruments for the third time. "The readings must be wrong. No biological entity can generate this level of force without technological enhancement." Commander Thex approached her station with heavy footsteps. "Doctor, I suggest you consider the possibility that your initial research was flawed. What we have just witnessed demonstrates capabilities that make humans potentially more dangerous than any species I have encountered." The Regelian warrior's words carried weight throughout the galactic community. His people were respected for their military expertise and honest assessment of threats. If Commander Thex was expressing concern about human capabilities, other species would take notice. Dr. Quintal was frantically reviewing his own notes and databases. "I have studied the Krillian berserkers, beings who can tear through steel bulkheads with their claws. I have documented the stone-crushing strength of Vorthon builders, but those species have natural weapons and enhanced bone structure. Humans appear to have soft tissue and fragile skeletons, yet this individual just accomplished something beyond what any of those enhanced species could achieve." Captain Veltar was already composing messages to his Trade Federation superiors. Human space had been considered safe territory for merchant vessels, a region where valuable cargo could be transported without heavy military escorts. If humans possessed hidden combat capabilities, those risk assessments would need immediate revision. Jake Morrison climbed to the observation deck to address the alien witnesses directly. He could see the shock and confusion on their faces, the way they were struggling to process what they had seen. This was exactly what he had been afraid of when Dr. Zekthera first requested the demonstration. "I think we should discuss what happened here," Jake said diplomatically. "Dr. Zekthera, you've observed something that contradicts your initial research. Perhaps we could arrange some follow-up interviews to help you understand the full scope of human capabilities." Zekthera looked at the human captain with new eyes. Before today, she had seen him as a simple administrator of a primitive species. Now she realized she might be looking at a representative of something far more complex and dangerous than she had ever imagined. "Captain Morrison, I must ask you directly, are all humans capable of such feats? Is what we witnessed a normal expression? Of human ability, or was Private Brooks somehow enhanced or modified? Jake considered his answer carefully. Ryan is a completely normal human being, Doctor. No genetic modifications, no cybernetic enhancements, no special training beyond basic military instruction. What you saw was a human being responding to a life-threatening situation with the capabilities that evolution has given our species. Amy Rodriguez joined the conversation, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen combat in multiple theaters. Doctor, if you want to understand humans, you need to learn about our history. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us in every possible way. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, plagues, predators, natural disasters. Every other intelligent species we've met evolved on worlds that supported and nurtured their development. Earth tried to exterminate us, so we learned to survive the impossible. She gestured toward the disabled tank below. What Ryan did down there isn't unusual for humans facing extinction. It's what we do when there's no other choice. We've been doing it for millions of years. Dr. Quintal was taking notes frantically. But the energy output, the force generation, the resistance to injury, these capabilities seem to violate basic biological principles. Lisa Carter looked up from her medical station where she was running additional tests on Ryan's blood samples. Doctor, human physiology is designed for emergency responses that go far beyond normal parameters. When we face life-threatening stress, our bodies produce chemical cocktails that enhance strength, speed, pain tolerance, and healing. We can temporarily become something more than our baseline biology suggests. She held up a blood sample vial. Ryan's adrenaline and endorphin levels are still 3 times normal range, even 20 minutes after the incident. His muscle tissue shows microscopic changes consistent with temporary enhancement. In a few hours, he'll return to baseline human normal. But for those critical moments, he became something extraordinary. Commander Thex studied the humans on the observation deck with newfound respect. You speak of this as if it is common knowledge among your people. Do all humans understand these capabilities? Jake nodded. We grow up hearing stories about humans who lifted cars off trapped children, who fought off dangerous animals to protect their families, who survived in conditions that should have killed them. We call it different things. Adrenaline rush, fight or flight response, hysterical strength. But yes, we know that humans can exceed normal limitations when survival is at stake. The alien observers exchanged glances, beginning to understand that they had fundamentally misunderstood this species. Dr. Zekthara's research had focused on baseline human capabilities, missing the crucial fact that humans were designed to transcend those baselines when necessary. This changes everything, Zekthara said quietly. My entire thesis, all my research conclusions, they're based on incomplete data. I was measuring human limitations without understanding human potential. The cargo bay fell silent as Private Ryan Brooks walked into the demonstration area. The tank loomed in front of him like a metal mountain, its 50 tons of armor and weaponry making him look tiny by comparison. Frank Collins had explained the exercise clearly. Ryan would attempt to disable the tank using standard military procedures while it operated in training mode. The tank would move slowly and fire practice rounds that would register hits without actually causing harm. Dr. Zekthara adjusted her recording equipment from the observation deck above. Her compound eyes tracked every movement as Ryan approached the massive machine. She noted his obvious nervousness, the way his hands shook slightly as he checked his equipment. This was exactly what she expected from such a weak species. Fear and inadequacy in the face of real military challenges. Commander Thex stood beside her with his thick arms crossed over his scaled chest. The Regelian warrior had fought in dozens of battles across the galaxy and recognized genuine combat preparation when he saw it. The human soldier looked nervous but determined, which was more promising than Thex had expected. Still, there was no way any biological being could seriously challenge a tank with personal weapons alone. Frank activated the tank's systems from his control station. The massive engine rumbled to life with a deep growling sound that filled the cargo bay. Warning lights flashed along the machine's hull as its weapons systems came online. Even in training mode, the tank was an intimidating sight as it began to move slowly across the floor. Ryan took cover behind a metal crate and pulled out his training weapon. The exercise called for him to use mobility and tactics to get close enough to attach a simulated explosive device to the tank's weak points. It was a standard military drill that human soldiers practiced regularly. The goal was to demonstrate tactical thinking and physical courage under pressure. The tank's turret swiveled toward Ryan's position and fired a practice round. The sound was loud but harmless, designed to simulate real combat without actual danger. Ryan rolled to a new position and began working his way closer to the tank, using the cargo containers scattered around the bay for cover. Zekthera made notes on her electronic pad as she watched. The human was moving adequately for his species, but his approach was predictable and slow. Any experienced warrior could see his intended path and counter it easily. She noted his elevated heart rate and stress indicators, clear signs that he was operating at the limits of human capability. For the first 10 minutes, everything went according to plan. Ryan demonstrated basic military tactics while the tank followed its programmed responses. He managed to avoid the practice fire and get within striking distance of the machine twice, though he had not yet successfully attached the simulated explosive device that would signal victory in the exercise. Then something went wrong with the tank's computer systems. Tony Martinez noticed the problem first from his monitoring station. The tank's movement patterns suddenly changed from the slow, predictable training mode to something much more aggressive. Warning lights began flashing on his control panel as the machine's weapon systems shifted to active status. "Frank," Tony shouted over the engine noise. "Something's wrong with the programming. The tank is switching to combat mode." Frank ran to the control station and saw what Tony meant. The tank's systems were reverting to their original military settings, the same ones used when the machine was active in real warfare 15 years ago. The practice ammunition was being replaced automatically with live rounds from the tank's emergency stores. "Shut it down," Frank ordered. Tony's fingers flew over the controls, but nothing happened. "I can't. The system has locked me out. It thinks we're in a real battle situation." In the cargo bay, Ryan suddenly realized that something had changed. The tank was moving faster now, its turret tracking him with deadly precision. The machine's engine roared louder as it accelerated toward his position. This was no longer a training exercise. Dr. Zekthara watched from above as the situation rapidly became dangerous. She expected the human to panic and call for help. Most intelligent species would recognize an impossible situation and retreat to safety. The logical response was to acknowledge defeat and wait for the technical problems to be resolved. Instead, Ryan did something that shocked every alien observer in the room. He charged directly at the tank. The massive machine's main cannon was swiveling to target him, its computer calculating the perfect shot to eliminate the threat. In seconds, it would fire a live round capable of destroying a building. Any rational being would run away or hide, but Ryan Brooks was not thinking rationally anymore. Something primal had awakened in the young human soldier. Millions of years of evolution kicked in. The same survival instincts that had carried his species through ice ages, plagues, and countless brushes with extinction. Humans had survived by refusing to accept defeat, by fighting even when the odds were impossible, by never giving up no matter how hopeless things seemed. Ryan let out a roar that seemed to come from somewhere deep in his chest, a sound of pure, human fury and determination. He sprinted straight at the tank, ignoring the turret that was tracking his movement. The logical part of his mind knew this was suicide, but logic had been overwhelmed by something much older and more powerful. As the tank's cannon finished its targeting sequence and prepared to fire, Ryan leapt into the air. His body moved with a speed and grace that surprised even him, fueled by adrenaline and desperate courage. Time seemed to slow down as he flew through the air toward the machine that should have killed him. His right fist, clenched tight with every ounce of strength his human body could produce, struck the tank's armor plating just below the main turret. The impact should have shattered every bone in his arm and done nothing to the 50 tons of armored steel. Instead, something impossible happened. The force of Ryan's punch, backed by human determination and the strange physics of desperate courage, actually penetrated the tank's armor. His fist punched completely through the steel plating with a sound like thunder. Sparks exploded from the impact point as electrical systems inside the tank began to fail. The massive machine shuddered like a wounded animal. Its engine sputtered and died as critical systems were severed by the impossible breach in its armor. The turret froze in place as power flowed away from its targeting computers. Warning alarms blared as the tank's computer tried to understand how its supposedly impenetrable armor had been compromised. Ryan landed hard on the cargo bay floor, rolling away from the now silent tank. His right hand was bloody and swollen, but incredibly no bones seemed to be broken. He looked up at the machine he had just disabled with his bare fist, hardly believing what had happened. The cargo bay was completely silent, except for the sound of cooling metal and Ryan's heavy breathing. Smoke drifted up from the hole his fist had punched through armor designed to withstand military weapons. The tank sat motionless, defeated by something that should have been impossible. Dr. Zekathara stared down at the scene with her compound eyes wide in shock. Her recording equipment had captured everything, but she could not believe what the data was telling her. According to her instruments, the human had just generated enough force to penetrate military-grade armor with his bare hand. This was beyond anything in her research about human limitations. Commander Thex moved closer to the observation window, his reptilian features showing amazement. In all his years of combat, he had never seen any being punch through tank armor with physical force, alone. His own elite warriors, enhanced with cybernetic implants and advanced training, could not achieve such a feat. The other alien observers stood in stunned silence. Dr. Quintal checked his recording equipment 3 times to make sure it was working correctly. Captain Veltar and Engineer Moxdon whispered to each other in their native languages, trying to find words for what they had just witnessed. Below in the cargo bay, Frank Collins and Tony Martinez ran to check on Ryan. The young soldier was sitting up examining his injured hand with curiosity rather than pain. The adrenaline was still flowing through his system, making him feel almost invincible. "Brooks, are you okay?" Frank asked, kneeling beside him. Ryan flexed his fingers experimentally. "I think so, Sergeant. That was intense." Frank looked at the hole in the tank's armor, then back at Ryan's bloody knuckles. In 20 years of military service, he had seen humans do incredible things under pressure. But this was something entirely new. A bare-fisted punch through steel armor was beyond human physical capabilities, yet the evidence was right in front of him. Dr. Lisa Carter rushed into the cargo bay with her medical kit, pushing past the security barriers that Frank had hastily erected. She knelt beside Ryan and began examining his hand with professional concern. "How is this possible?" she muttered, as she cleaned the blood from his knuckles. "The force required to penetrate that armor should have destroyed every bone in your arm." Ryan shrugged, still feeling the effects of the adrenaline rush. "I don't know, Doc. I just saw that thing about to kill me and decided I wasn't going to let it happen." Above them, Dr. Zek-Thara was frantically reviewing her data. Everything she thought she knew about human biology was being challenged by. 3 days passed before Captain Jake Morrison finally agreed to arrange the demonstration that Dr. Zek-Thara demanded. He had hoped the alien scientist would be satisfied with observing normal daily activities aboard Kepler-7, but she kept insisting that such observations were worthless for her research. She wanted to see humans under real pressure, facing actual challenges that would reveal their true limitations. Jake called Master Sergeant Frank Collins to his office early in the morning. Frank was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from 20 years of military service. His face was weathered and serious, the kind of face that had seen too much combat to be impressed by alien scientists making theories about human weakness. "Frank, I need you to set up some kind of demonstration for our visiting researcher," Jake explained as they sat across from each other in the captain's office. "She wants to see humans in combat situations." Frank leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "What kind of combat situations, sir? Because if she wants to see real combat, I can tell her some stories that would change her mind about humans being weak." "Nothing that dangerous," Jake said quickly. "Maybe some physical fitness tests, obstacle courses, basic training exercises, something to show that we're not as helpless as she thinks." Frank was quiet for a moment, thinking. He had read Dr. Zek-Thara's preliminary report and found it insulting. The alien scientist had described humans as barely intelligent animals who got lucky with technology. Frank had served alongside humans who carried wounded comrades for miles through enemy territory, who kept fighting even when their bodies were broken and bleeding. But he also understood that sometimes you had to show people the truth instead of just telling them. "I can set up some basic exercises," Frank said. "But, sir, if this scientist really wants to see what humans can do under pressure, basic training isn't going to prove much. She'll just see what she expects to see." Jake rubbed his forehead, feeling the weight of the decision. "What are you suggesting, Frank?" "Well, we've got that old tank in the museum section. It's been decommissioned for 15 years, but Tony, Martinez could probably get it running again. We could set up a training scenario where our people have to deal with an armored threat. Nothing dangerous, just a simulation to show how humans handle real military challenges." The idea made Jake nervous. The tank was a massive piece of equipment from Earth's military history, a 50-ton monster of steel and weaponry that had been built for actual warfare. Even decommissioned and running on training protocols, it was an intimidating machine. "I don't know, Frank. That seems like it might be too much." Frank shrugged. "Sir, with respect, this alien thinks we're weak pack animals. A few push-ups and an obstacle course aren't going to change her mind. But if she sees a human soldier face down a tank and handle it professionally, maybe she'll start to understand that her research is wrong." After thinking about it for another day, Jake finally gave permission for the demonstration. He made Frank promise that all safety protocols would be followed and that the tank would only operate in training mode with no live ammunition. Frank agreed. though privately he wondered if safety protocols would be enough to handle what might happen when humans were put under real pressure. Word spread quickly through the station that there would be a combat demonstration for the visiting alien scientist. Dr. Zekthara was excited when Jake informed her of the plans. She immediately sent messages to other alien observers, inviting them to witness what she expected would be definitive proof of human limitations. Commander Thex arrived from his ship the day before the demonstration. The large reptilian warrior was curious to see how humans would perform in a military exercise. His own people were known throughout the galaxy for their combat skills, and he had heard many species claim to be warriors. Most disappointed him with their weakness and cowardice. Dr. Quintal came from the Academic Council ship, bringing recording equipment to document the event for scientific purposes. The elderly scholar had studied many species over his long career, and was interested in seeing if humans would prove as weak as Dr. Zekthara claimed. 2 other alien observers arrived as well. Captain Veltar from the Centauri Trade Federation and Engineer Moxdan from the Builders Guild. They had come partly out of curiosity, and partly because they wanted to understand human capabilities for future business dealings. Frank spent hours preparing the demonstration area in the station's large cargo bay. The space was big enough to accommodate the tank and provide room for maneuvering. He had Tony Martinez work on the old war machine for 2 days, replacing power cells and checking all systems. The tank was a relic from Earth's past conflicts, but it was still an impressive sight when fully operational. Private Ryan Brooks volunteered to participate in the demonstration. He was young, maybe 22 years old, with short brown hair and nervous green eyes. Ryan had completed basic training 6 months earlier and was assigned to station security. He was not the biggest or strongest human on the crew, but he had good scores in all his training exercises, and Frank trusted him to follow orders. "You sure about this, Brooks?" Frank asked as they went over the exercise plan. "It's just a demonstration, but that tank is still a real machine. Even in training mode, it's going to be loud and intimidating." Ryan nodded, though Frank could see he was nervous. "I understand, Sergeant. The alien scientists think we're weak. I want to show them they're wrong about humans." The night before the demonstration, Dr. Zekthara reviewed her notes and prepared her recording equipment. She was confident that tomorrow would provide the final evidence she needed for her research. Humans would face a military challenge and prove themselves inadequate. Their slow reflexes, weak muscles, and poor decision-making would be clearly documented for the entire galaxy to see. She had studied the specifications of the tank that would be used. It weighed 50 tons and was armored with steel plating designed to withstand military weapons. Even decommissioned, it represented the kind of threat that would overwhelm human capabilities. No biological being could seriously challenge such a machine with physical force alone. Amy Rodriguez found Ryan in the mess hall that evening, eating dinner alone and looking worried. She sat down across from him with her own food tray. "How you feeling about tomorrow?" she asked. Ryan shrugged. "Nervous, I guess. That alien scientist seems pretty sure that we're going to embarrass ourselves." Amy smiled grimly. "Let me tell you something, Brooks. I've seen humans do things that would make these aliens wet themselves in fear. We might not be the biggest or strongest species in the galaxy, but we've got something most of them don't understand." "What's that?" "We don't know when to quit. Every other species in the galaxy has limits they accept. When things get impossible, they give up and try something else. Humans are too stupid to know when something is impossible, so we just keep trying until we make it work." Ryan felt a little better after talking to Amy. He spent the rest of the evening reviewing his training and trying to prepare mentally for whatever would happen tomorrow. He knew the alien observers expected him to fail, expected all humans to fail. But Ryan had grown up hearing stories about human history, about people who faced impossible odds and won through determination and refusal to surrender. The morning of the demonstration, Jake Morrison stood in the cargo bay watching Frank make final preparations. The tank sat in the center of the space like a sleeping metal beast. Its armor plating was dark gray and scarred from old battles. The main cannon pointed toward the ceiling, waiting to be activated. "Last chance to call this off, sir," Frank said quietly. Jake looked around at the alien observers taking their positions on the observation deck. Dr. Zek Thara was setting up multiple recording devices, confident that she was about to witness proof of her theories. Commander Thek stood with his arms crossed, watching with professional interest. The other aliens whispered among themselves, making what sounded like bets about how quickly the human would fail. "No," Jake said finally. "Let's show them what humans can really do." Dr. Zekthara stepped off the transport ship with her 4 legs moving in perfect rhythm across the metal floor of Kepler 7 station. Her compound eyes scanned the docking bay with scientific precision, taking in every detail of the human-built facility. The walls were plain gray metal, nothing fancy or impressive about them. The lighting was harsh and white, typical of what she expected from such a primitive species. Her research equipment floated behind her in anti-grav containers, everything she needed to prove her theory about human weakness. Captain Jake Morrison walked toward her with a smile on his face. He was tall for a human, maybe 6 feet, with brown hair and kind blue eyes. Zekthara noted his slow walking speed and the way his single-pair eyes moved back and forth instead of seeing everything at once like her superior vision. The human. Captain wore a simple uniform, dark blue with silver buttons. Nothing about him suggested any real threat or power. "Welcome to Kepler 7, Dr. Zekthara," Jake said, extending his hand in the strange human greeting ritual. "We're honored to have such a famous scientist aboard our station." Zekthara looked at his hand for a moment before briefly touching it with one of her 4 manipulator appendages. The human skin felt warm and soft, confirming her research about their fragile biology. "Thank you, Captain Morrison. I am eager to begin my observations of your species." Jake led her through the corridors of the station. Humans moved past them in both directions, going about their daily work. Zekthara watched them carefully, making mental notes. They moved slowly compared to most galactic species. Their bodies looked soft and weak, with no natural armor or obvious weapons. She saw a female human named Dr. Lisa Carter working in one of the laboratories they passed. The woman had long blonde hair tied back and wore white clothes. She was looking into some kind of microscope, her movements careful but unimpressive. "That's our head of biological research," Jake explained when he noticed Zekthara watching. "Dr. Carter has been studying alien plant samples for the past 3 years. Zekthara made a note in her electronic pad. 3 years to study simple plant matter seemed like a very long time. Her own people could analyze and understand most biological samples in a few days at most. This was more evidence of human mental limitations. They continued through the station. In the engineering section, Zekthara observed a human male named Tony Martinez working on some kind of power coupling. He was a short man with dark hair and strong-looking arms, but even his muscles seemed small compared to species like the Krillian warriors or Vorthan builders. Tony was using simple tools, nothing advanced or efficient. He moved with care, taking much longer than necessary to complete basic repairs. "Tony keeps our power systems running," Jake said with pride in his voice. "He's one of the best engineers in the fleet. The alien scientist almost laughed. If this slow, careful worker was one of their best engineers, then human technology must be far more primitive than even her worst estimates. She watched Tony struggle with a heavy component that most other species could lift easily. The human had to use a mechanical device to move it, proving his physical weakness. In the central hub of the station, Jake gathered the crew for a formal introduction. About 20 humans stood in the large room, men and women of different ages and sizes. Zekathara studied each of them, noting their various weaknesses. There was Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, a woman with short black hair and dark eyes. She stood, straight like a soldier, but her small frame would be no match for real combat. Next to her stood Dr. Peter Hayes, an older man with gray hair who moved slowly and seemed tired. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet Dr. Zekathara from the Vorthon Collective," Jake announced. "She's here to study human biology and behavior for her research." The humans made polite sounds of welcome, but Zekathara could see the curiosity in their eyes. They were probably wondering what she might discover about them. If only they knew how disappointing the results would be. "I am pleased to meet you all," Zekathara said, her voice translator making her words understandable to the humans. "I hope you will not mind my observations over the coming weeks." After the introduction, Jake led her to the conference room where she would present her initial findings. The room was simple, with a long table and chairs around it. A view screen on one wall showed the stars outside. Several alien observers were already present, including Commander Thex from the Rigelian Navy and Dr. Quintal from the Academic Council. They had come to witness her groundbreaking research. Zekathara activated her presentation device and began to speak. "Esteemed colleagues, I have spent the past year studying this species called humans from a distance. My findings are quite clear. Humans are among the weakest intelligent species we have encountered." She showed images of human bone structure on the screen. "Note the thin bone density compared to species like the Krillians. Human bones break easily under stress. Their muscle fibers are inefficient, producing less force per unit than almost any other species. Commander Thex, a large reptilian being with scales and sharp teeth, nodded with interest. His people were known as fierce warriors throughout the galaxy." "What about their reaction times?" he asked. "Terrible," Zekathara replied. "Humans process information slowly. Their single-pair eyes limit their vision. Their hearing is weak. They have almost no natural weapons or armor. They are barely sentient pack animals who stumbled into space travel through luck rather than evolution." She continued for another hour, presenting data about human limitations, their slow-running speed, their need for 8 hours of sleep every day, their weak grip strength, their inability to see in darkness. Every measurement she had taken showed humans to be inferior to other galactic species. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez sat in the back of the room, listening to every word. Her hands slowly formed fists as the alien scientist dismissed her entire species as worthless. Amy had served in 3 combat zones and seen humans do impossible things when pushed to their limits. This arrogant scientist had no idea what humans were really capable of. Dr. Lisa Carter also attended the presentation. She listened with growing anger as Zekathara described humans as lucky animals. Lisa had spent years working with alien scientists and knew that many species underestimated humanity. But this level of dismissal was insulting and dangerous. When the presentation ended, Zekathara looked around the room with satisfaction. "I believe these findings prove that humans pose no threat to the established galactic order. They are weak, slow, and limited. However, I would like to conduct some practical observations to confirm my research. What kind of observations? Jake asked. I wish to see humans in action, physical challenges, problem-solving tests, perhaps even combat simulations. I want to document their limitations in real situations, not just laboratory conditions. Commander Thex leaned forward with interest. Combat simulations? That could be most educational. Jake looked uncomfortable. He knew his crew well and understood that humans could be unpredictable when challenged. But he also knew that refusing might seem like proving the aliens' point about human weakness. We can arrange some demonstrations, Jake said carefully, but I want to start with basic physical fitness tests. Zekathara waved one of her appendages dismissively. Basic tests will not provide useful data. I need to see humans face real challenges. How do they react when confronted with genuine threats? How do they perform under pressure? These are the questions my research must answer. As the meeting ended and beings filed out of the room, Amy Rodriguez approached Jake privately. Captain, this is a bad idea. That scientist thinks she knows everything about us, but she's about to learn something very different. Jake nodded, understanding Amy's concern. But the request had been made officially through galactic channels. Refusing would look like cowardice, and might actually support Zekathara's theories about human weakness. Sometimes the only way to prove someone wrong was to let them see the truth for themselves.